Welcome back to the channel. Today's an exciting video for me because we finally get to start working on the engine for the car. I went and picked up the engine from the machine shop there on the weekend, so we get to get started on it. This block is from Performance World. They obviously are a Canadian company up here, and they have started producing some small block Chevy and small block Ford aftermarket cast iron blocks. So you can get them in either. This is a big or a larger bore, so this is 4/125 bore, but they do make a 4-inch standard bore one as well. Machine shop, I use Muscle Motors in Strathmore, Alberta, and he went through it all obviously and said it was pretty nice. It just needed the same routine things that any dart block or any other aftermarket block would need. So I think it's money well spent. It's about $2,500 cheaper than a dart block probably by the time you get it to Canada, and the machine work would have been about the same. So I'll spin it over here, but we did the coating on the inside of the block. With it being a fresh casting and being a little bit porous, this will just really help oil drain back, and anything that's getting released from the casting, it should help prevent that. As far as like lifters and everything like that, it's all standard 351 stuff, aside from the underside that's got 4-bolt mains. I'll spin it over quick and show you. Yeah, so as you can see, it's 4 bolts on all 5 mains. The middle 3 are splayed, so the bolts go out, and there's lots of, you can kind of see there, lots of extra like the casting is really thick around the cylinders. So I did lots of deburring on the inside here. We didn't coat the underside, but kind of got all the rough casting marks ground out. And yeah, everything, all the holes are tapped. So I am waiting on cam bearings because I forgot to order them. So hopefully I'll have them in the next couple days before I can start putting the short block together. But in the meantime anyway, I need to gap all of the rings. So I'll show you the way I do it, which is pretty standard way. I'm sure there's lots of ways to do it, lots of different tools, but the biggest thing is when you get these, it comes with the, obviously what the piston says, and these pistons are dish piston from DSS, and the DSS rings as well. They give you a measurement for, depending on the bore size and if you're running boost or NA, what the ring gap should be. So for what I'm going to be doing, 15 to 30 pounds of boost, it's bore multiplied by 7 thousandths, so the top ring needs to be about 29 thousandths end gap, and the second ring needs to be about 31 thousandths end gap. So I'll spin the block over and we'll put a ring in and see where it's at. I have a very basic piston ring filing tool. There is really nice ones from companies like Goodson, and I think Total Seal makes one too, that have a dial indicator on it, but they are also very expensive. So I have the cheap one from Jegs or Summit Racing, but it works just as fine. It just takes a lot more time, and you got to be careful because the diamond wheel on there removes material very fast. So I'll spin the block back over and we'll put the first ring in and see where it's at. Okay, I'll start at cylinder number 1. On small block Ford, cylinders are numbered 1, 2, 3, 4 down the passenger side, and then 5, 6, 7, 8 down the driver's side. So a nice thing that I wish I had that I don't is a ring squaring tool. I could get a cheap one off Summit, but I never ordered one and I don't have one now. So I just put the ring in. I can use the piston just to square it up in the hole so that It's at the same height all the way around. And you can kind of see there is already a gap in the ring, so sometimes when you get these file fit rings, they're not even close and they won't even go in the hole until you file a bit of the end off. So I just got a feeler gauge. So like I said, on these top ones they need to be 29 thousandths, and this one already seems like it's really close to that. If I can get the right size. Okay, there. I've got a 25 and a 4, so that's 29 thousandths like it should be, and it almost goes flush but won't quite. So this one just needs to be opened up the slightest amount. Like I said, this is actually kind of surprising. I'm pretty sure these are file fit rings, and they are almost exactly where they need to be right off the start. Like I said, a lot of rings, the file fit ones, they're closed all the way up, and you actually got to file them even just to get the ring in the bore to start out with. But regardless, this one leads a very, very light touch on the grinder here. So the best way I like to do this is sit the ring flat, and then you pinch it up against these 2 bolts and hold it up against the stone, and you can just give it a quick turn, and that's literally all it needs, especially with how close these ones are. Once you do that, you need to deburr the ring, and they make ring files, but again, I forgot to order one from Summit, and I don't want to wait a week, so I've got some 800 grit sandpaper taped onto a ruler, and you just kind of need to break the edge of it off so that there's not a burr on there. Any fine grit sandpaper will really work for this just fine. But now that the edge is off that, we could put it back in the cylinder and see if it's good now. Alright, put this back in. And now it is snug, but it seats all the way down, so that is about perfect clearance for that one. I'll go back one more time and deburr this ring, and I'll clean everything before I put it together anyway. I can check the second ring and see if it's as close. And it looks like it from the initial. And this one needs to be about 31 thousandths. And I've got 29 here. 29 actually fits snug. And I grab a 6 thousandths shim with the 25 to make 31, and same thing as the other ring. It's just a touch too tight. It's very close, but same thing, it just needs a very light touch on the diamond wheel, and that should be right too. So this is kind of a longer, monotonous process, but obviously super necessary to make sure everything's right, because if those ring gaps aren't wide enough and you crank up the boost on this thing and a ring butts together, it'll break the ringland and it'll break the top of the piston right off. So this is a pretty important step. So I'll go ahead and go through all 8 cylinders and the oil rings and get everything so it's the right size. Alright, I got all the rings gapped. Everything checked out good. When I'm building an engine, I like to keep track of it all, so I'll just note down how everything measured out in case I ever have any issues. I can go back and take a look. But they all measured really close. There was 1 or 2 cylinders that I got a little heavy on the grinder, and you know, the ring's at 30 thousandths clearance instead of 29 like it should be, but I mean, that's not going to make or break anything inside the engines. So I'm happy with all of that turned out. I'm going to get all the rods washed. They're like partially assembled with the rod bearings, and the rod bolts got the ultra torque lube on them, and you know, there's a little dust in them from when they were honing the pin bores and stuff. So go ahead and get all the rods washed, get the pistons washed and the pin, and make sure everything is clean, and then I can start assembling the pistons onto the rods, and we'll go from there. Alright, all the parts are clean now, so I'm going to start assembling the pistons onto the rods. Couple things to keep in mind when you're doing this is obviously the orientation of the piston. For these it doesn't matter as much, but they'll have the 2 valve reliefs in them, and the big valve relief obviously has to match where the intake valve is, and the small one is for the exhaust. And then on the small block forward, obviously the passenger side bank is further forward than the driver's side, and the intake valve will be first, and then it'll just alternate intake, exhaust, and so on through. And then on the passenger or the driver's side, it's the opposite. So the furthest forward is the exhaust, and then intake, exhaust, intake, and so on. So you got to keep in mind where the valve relief is on the piston, and also the orientation of the connecting rod this way or this way on the piston, because if you could see on the rod, there's a really small chamfer on one side, and there's a very large one on the other side. And you can see on the crank, on the rod journal, there's the radius on the rod journal, and so you have to make sure that the big radius on the rod will match to butt up against that radius that's on the crank. Otherwise, if the rod is the wrong way around, it won't happen every time, but sometimes you could get it where you'll have some binding issues because the bearing will be too far over and it can get into the radius on the crank. So obviously, with the passenger side bank being further forward than the driver's side, all of the big radius sides on the rod should face the front of the block down the passenger side, and all the big radiuses on the driver's side bank should face the back of the block. So keep that in mind. It's yeah, pretty important to not mess that up, because you will definitely have issues if the rods are the wrong way. But yeah, with that being said, I'll start getting all of these assembled. Well, one other thing, these use a clip like with a snap ring plier. There's a bunch of different styles. These are easy ones to install, so I usually just put one in one side, then put the pin and the rod together, put one on the other side, and can put the rings on. What was the other thing? Oh, and then for assembly, for like the pin, I like this Permatex Ultra Slick stuff. It works good for an assembly lube. So yeah, I'll get to work hanging all the rods on the pistons, and that'll be one more thing finished up. I'm going to get the rings put on too now, and they're very straightforward. You got the oil ring, and there's this expander ring and the 2 rails. So one rail above and below. You got the second ring, which you won't be able to see on here, but it's got an edge on the bottom side, which it's like a scraper to scrape all the oil off the cylinder walls, and it's marked with a little N on the top. And then same thing, top ring, it's got a mark of which way it goes up. So there's a few different ways you can install the rings. You can twist them onto the piston, but that spreads them this way, and I don't love doing that. So they just got this tool that clips in and will expand the ring out to get it over the piston and install it. Yeah, and then we'll put the bearing shells in. A lot of bearings, it doesn't matter what way they go, but these ones from Cleveite are marked upper and lower, so you have to pay attention to that. Upper is obviously the connecting rod side, and the lower is the cap side. These bearings are also kind of mix and matched between a normal set and the X set, which is a slightly thinner bearing to get the clearances wherever we wanted them. So as I assemble the rods and pistons, I'll get the rings and the bearings, everything in, so that once I'm ready, I just have to oil them up and can install them. Alright, now that all the pistons and rods are assembled and good to go, I'm going to get the main caps put on here and check the main bearing clearance. So my dial bore gauge is pretty short, so I can't put all 5 caps on at once, so I'm just gonna have to go one at a time, and I'll start with the number 5 and work my way forward and check all these clearances. So I'll get the bearings in the block and the cap, get it torqued down, and then we'll get a measurement off the crank journal and see where we're at. Okay, the number 5 cap is on and torqued with the bearing in there. This crank is a 4340 forged steel crank. It was all internally balanced by Muscle Motors when they did the block. Because this was an aftermarket block, I was actually able to order it with the Cleveland main size. So a normal 351 Windsor is 3" on the mains, whereas the Cleveland is 2 3/4 inch, so 2" 750 thousandths. So from what I read, the smaller the journal, they tend to oil a bit better, and the bearing speed is lower. So a combination of those things, the smaller main is the better choice. So I got a 2 to 3" mic, and I'll check these mains. Like I said, they should be somewhere right around 2" 750 thousandths. I don't know if you'll be able to see on the mic, but it is 2" 749 thousandths. So I'll get the mic, this is locked down, and then I'll get the mic set up in the vise, and then I can set up the dial bore gauge off of this to measure the clearance. Okay, I got the soft jaws in the vise and the micrometer in there. It's not, you don't want to squeeze this tight or anything because it could distort the mic, so it's just got enough weight on it to hold it in there. And then really what I do, you'll probably won't be able to see the actual readout on the screen, but I'll put the mic or the dial bore gauge in here, and then on the dial I'll just get it so it's zeroed out, which it is. So yeah, you'll just turn the dial until it's zeroed out, and then we'll go back over to the block, and then I can put the gauge inside. And like I said, I don't think I'll be able to show it really on the gauge itself, but when I put it in here and check it, I have right at 3,000ths, maybe 27. It's very close, right in kind of 27 or 3,000ths, and that's right in the range. My engine builder wants it at 2.5 to 3,000ths, so I'm right in the sweet spot. So I'll move on to number 4 here, torque it down, do the same thing, measure the crank, and just go through the process from the back to the front and get each main checked and make sure they're good to go. Okay, all 5 main bearings, clearances are all checked. They all came out right where they were supposed to, about 3,000ths of an inch for oil clearance. I'll probably stop this video here. I'm waiting for some parts to show up. So in a couple weeks time, I'll have the parts, put the short block together, and then you'll see that second video. So stay tuned to watch for that. We'll get the short block together, degree the cam, and then I can measure for push rods before I'll do a separate video rebuilding the cylinder heads with all the new parts. So thanks for watching, and follow along for more.